Tessa Sanchez.
Thank you, Matt.
Director of Sustainability Policy or Head of Sustainability Policy for Uber. Thank you for being here.
Of course, thank you for having me.
Yeah. Well, in the context of this conversation, Uber's been a longtime member of our Transportation Electrification Partnership, but really for the games, notably is the official LA28 partner for ride hail and delivery. I think that's it. So there's a lot of opportunity and I suppose challenges ahead for Uber. When we started the transportation partnership, we set an ambitious target, among others, to get to 100% electric TNC by 2028. Obviously, there's state policy that's driving some of this, but where will we be, and how is ride hail emerging as one of LA's most powerful strategies to advance zero emissions mobility in our region?
Yeah. First, want to say thanks so much, LACI, for having us. This is such a cool venue. I think this is probably the only time I'll ever get to sit in a box at a professional sports stadium. So thank you for that experience. But yeah, I think that in terms of where we're going to be in 2028, you mentioned state policy. In California, there's the Clean Mile Standard, which requires TNCs to hit increasing targets for electrification through 2030. So we're on track so far, as we have a big hill to climb, but I'm quite bullish on our prospects to get there. So as far as kind of like climate and kind of like our progress so far, I think that ride hail has tremendous promise, partially because these are high mileage vehicles. So what does that mean? So for our Uber drivers, the top 20% of drivers, they drive around 200 miles a day, or roughly 40,000 miles a year. If you put that in context, compared to traditional drivers like what you and me probably drive, it's around 40 miles a day or 12,000 miles a year. So the kind of climate impact, the GHG emissions reduction potential is huge, is kind of 3-4x. So ride hail kind of just generally holds a lot of promise, I think, when it comes to electrification. But at Uber, climate is one of the reasons why we're quite bullish on electrifications. There are several reasons why we're pushing electrification at Uber. The first is because it's better for drivers. They eliminate gas costs, they reduce their maintenance costs, and a lot of our drivers, most of our drivers globally, not all of them, but most of them, they take home more money when they're driving an EV. So that's the first. The second is it's better for riders. They generally like a cleaner, quieter, more high-tech ride. We find that riders give better reviews, they give better tips in an EV. And when they're riding in what's called Uber Electric, used to be called Uber Green, we recently changed the name. Maybe actually like show of hands, like who here knows what Uber Electric is or like regularly takes Uber Electric? Great, love that. Would love to see more hands though. If you didn't know, it is an option in the product selector within Uber. They're fully electric rides, not hybrid, not plug-in hybrid. And we intentionally make sure that they're priced at the same level as UberX. So if you guys are leaving here in an Uber, I want to hear that you guys are taking Uber Electric. So that's the rider piece, and then the second is it's better for cities, like zero tailpipe emissions and cleaner air for everyone. So that's the reason kind of why we do it. And then as far as like our success, I'll kind of throw out some more stats. Over the last 5 years, Uber's become the most widely available platform for EV rides in the world, so globally, which is pretty impressive. Uber drivers are going electric 5 times faster than the general population in US, Canada, and Europe. And then if we zoom in on California and in LA, 1 in 5 miles driven on the Uber platform in California and LA is electric. And then the stat that I think actually that's probably the most exciting is that 1 in 4 riders on Uber say that their first ever EV ride was on Uber. So just there are millions of people being exposed to EVs every day, which I think just really kind of stretches our impact.
Yeah, well, that's super exciting. Spencer Reeder's here. He was with Audi and headed sustainability. We used to talk about this, that for people who the first time they drive in an EV, it often is with rideshare, ride hail. And I remember picking up, there's other things to comment about LA Exit, but when I took an Uber from there, Uber Electric, I remember the driver, this was a few years ago, early in the Uber Electrics. I think it's where you introduced the product first in LA, was at LAX. And the driver was so enthusiastic about their Kia EV6, I think it was. He knew the charge speed, he knew everything about it.
Yeah, they're evangelists.
Oh my, sure. And so if you get in a car and you ask about it, like, you're obviously going to get educated as a rider.
They're EV salesmen.
They really are.
Really.
And we took a field study trip to London a little over a year ago, and those drivers, we sat and talked with 4 of the drivers who were driving all electric, and the passion they had and the savings that they were experiencing. Well, speaking of, we know for drivers, economics have to make sense. And you've announced some new initiatives specifically designed to tip that scale for drivers. Can you walk us through what you're doing to help drivers make the switch?
Yeah. So to kind of back up a little bit, when we think about electrification at Uber, we kind of think of it like a flywheel. So our job is to first create demand for the sustainable option. So in our case, that's Uber Electric. Second, we need to make sure that supply is easily accessible. So that might be making it cheaper, or it might make making charging more seamless. And then the third is really kind of education and awareness. So kind of like the faster we push that flywheel, I think the faster we see adoption go up. And then as far as the initiatives that we're kind of undertaking to support that flywheel, again, kind of like 3 big buckets. So the first being incentives. Last month we announced that we're doing $4,000 what we call Go Electric grants for eligible drivers in California, New York City, Colorado, and Massachusetts. And I mean, just when you think about like the 30D federal tax credit that just expired, that was $4,000 for used EVs. So our Go Electric grant is for new and used, but we feel that that's like a nice backfill given that tax credit is no longer an option for folks. So that's the incentive piece. The second is on tech and kind of what we're doing to enable tech in our platform. So for drivers who are thinking about going electric, we have several features. So we have what we call like our Uber Hub to give drivers information about going electric. We have like an AI chatbot. Everyone has an AI chatbot these days. We do too. To give them info. And then also I think really valuably like a mentorship program and kind of like peer-to-peer exchange because it really helps to hear from other drivers what is their experience driving an EV, what's their experience charging, where do they charge. So that I think is really powerful. So that's for the drivers that are thinking about going electric. We also have features for drivers who already are driving an EV, and those are features within the app like our charge map, where they can see available chargers, and then also what we call battery aware matching, which means that we're not gonna match a driver with a ride if they don't have the sufficient battery to complete that trip. So I think that really kind of helps with like the range anxiety. Incentives, tech, and then partnerships is the last one. We do partnerships with OEMs to secure discounts on behalf of our drivers off the cost of the vehicle. And then additionally, we have partnerships with charge point operators to secure discounts on behalf of our drivers off the cost of charging. So yeah, I think that probably covers everything we're doing.
Very cool. I know one of the challenges, I mean, there are other headwinds that I want to ask you about that slow down progress. and ask you where we need more innovation. I know one of those challenges is a charging availability, particularly if a driver lives in a multifamily, multi-unit dwelling, often don't have charging. It's something LACI and our partners have really been trying to chip away at. It's critical to do. And then, fast charging in their neighborhood. But what do you see are the headwinds for the innovation and collaboration needed to make sure drivers can switch to EVs?
Yeah, so maybe it would be helpful to kind of drill in on like what our drivers' pain points are specifically in LA. So every month we do what's called like what we call it a charging pulse survey. We ask really detailed questions of drivers in all the major metro cities in the US. Ask them detailed questions about their charging experience over time. We ask them things like, how do they charge? Do they charge at home? Do they charge in a multifamily building? Do they have a dedicated parking space, or do they solely rely on fast charging? We ask them, do they charge at EVgo's or Tesla superchargers or Electrify Americas? But we also ask them as well, like what their main challenges are when it comes to charging. And when we look at drivers surveyed in LA, there are two top challenges. I think that will be familiar to a lot of folks. One is the cost of charging. Cost is too high. Second is accessible, just access to charging. There are not enough chargers where they need them. So nothing surprising there. But as far as what we're doing about it at Uber, I think maybe first on cost, I mentioned those charging discounts that we're negotiating on behalf of drivers with CPOs. We have a great partnership with EVgo, for example. Drivers get 45% off the cost of charging.
We have a couple EVgo fast chargers in our parking lot. We see a lot of
great.
TNC drivers.
Yeah, well, I'm sure that they're charging there because they get good discounts.
Yeah.
And then I think generally with CPOs, we're trying to negotiate steep discounts, anywhere from 20 to 50%. So that's kind of how we're trying to tackle the cost piece. I think the cost piece is going to continue to be a growing issue just as electricity rates generally are going up in really throughout the world, but especially in the US. And then as far as chargers where drivers need them, we're doing a lot, but maybe one thing I'll focus on is on a partnership that we have with C40 cities, if folks are familiar with C40.
You are a global organization of mayors working together around the world on climate change.
Yes, thank you. So we've launched this project with C40 to try to increase access for high mileage drivers to charging infrastructure. We're really trying to get away, I think this has been a theme of today, getting away from planning more into implementation. So we're focusing right now on 3 cities, Boston, Phoenix, and London. And each city has a very unique project in terms of how we can actually get more drivers access to charging stations. So I won't go into detail on each project, but we do think that it has the potential to increase access for about 55,000 drivers, which we're very excited about. And one thing we're looking to do, it's not finalized yet, but we're looking to add LA to that project. Ahead of the Olympics.
I'm going to hold you. That's your commitment today.
That could be the answer to my commitment question. But I also think maybe just on this headwinds question, it's very salient right now. Things I think in the EV industry can be a little bit of a bummer right now. But one of the tailwinds that I think is really exciting and that we're excited about over at Uber is the potential of the used EV market. It's something that we're talking a lot and that we're looking at really closely. So there are about 14 million used EVs that are expected to be sold in the US and Europe in the next 5 years. And then we look really, really closely at total cost of ownership of all the vehicles on the Uber platform. But when we look at used EVs and their kind of comparable ICE comparison, they're now at parity, which is very cool to see that we're kind of finally here at this point. And our drivers are generally more likely to buy a used vehicle anyways. So I think that we're going to see in the next couple of years a lot more used EVs on the platform.
Yeah. We won't get into residual values and how that messes with people, but another topic for another day. You guys recently Uber did a paper with Cadmus that outlines some of what's needed to accelerate the transition. If you had a policymaker sit in front of you, what would your to-do list be to support the bold 2020 targets and beyond for Uber?
Yeah, thanks for mentioning the Cadmus paper. If folks want to access it, it's called Electrifying ride hail in the US and Canada. And it really looks at like what are the policies that can really move the needle at the federal, state, local, and then utility level when it comes specifically for ride hail electrification. So in terms of like top two that I'll just kind of grab from that paper, I think the first is like incentive programs that are very specific to the ride hail sector. We'd love to see more of that. And the second, there are great examples in Colorado and then Massachusetts of that, where those states have programs that are really kind of helping boost adoption there. The second being what I kind of like want to call is like more, I guess, kind of like less financially driven, but like still really important in terms of driving adoption is in a big focus on airports. Would love to see more fast charging near airports. There's like a great BP Pulse depot that just opened near LAX. Would love to see more of that. That's where our drivers need charging, is near airports. But also other policies like green curbs or kind of discounts for EVs at the airport.
Yeah, great stuff. Amply was one of our startups that then got bought by BP for the start of that project. All right, last question. Got to wrap up, but I want to hear, I already gave you your commitment that Uber's going to make, but maybe you got something more. What's your vision for LA by 2028 in the context of your work?
I think kind of like quick hit, would love to see LA, just on this topic of charging infrastructure, would love to see the games be able to catalyze more permanent charging infrastructure. I think that there's like a real like opportunity to do that. I think that Uber like has like a real role to play there. And we're going to be having some announcements actually next month on how Uber may also be able to like support catalyzing more public charging infrastructure. It's just so important for our drivers. 50% say that they charge once a day or more. And like you mentioned multifamily housing, they're less likely to have access to a single family home where they have dedicated parking. So yeah, so I just would love to see more fast charging infrastructure as a result of the games.
Well, join me in giving it up for Tessa Sanchez. Thank you so much, Tessa.